Members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to be here. For 20 months, we have witnessed live-streamed genocide being perpetrated by Israel against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Despite UN reports affirming that Israel is committing genocidal acts, the issuance of provisional measures by the ICJ, a separate ICJ ruling that Israel's occupation of Palestine is entirely illegal, the use of starvation as a weapon of war, and the deaths of tens of thousands of people in Gaza, the central bank continues to act as the gateway into Europe for Israel bonds, and this is simply unconscionable. The central bank directly facilitates the sale of Israel bonds in the European Union. Since 2021, as the home member state for Israel, the central bank has approved the State of Israel bond issuance programme on an annual basis. Last September, 11 months into the genocide in Gaza, the central bank approved a prospectus with no upper limit as to the amount of money that could be raised by the bonds. Israel bonds fund genocide. The prospectus itself refers to the decision, and I quote, to undertake military action which resulted in the drafting of more than 300,000 reservists, launching the war in Gaza, end of quote. The central bank has said that the advertising slogan, Israel is at war, stand with Israel, is not, and again quote, inconsistent with the disclosures in the Israeli prospectus, end of quote. And of course, what Israel calls the war in Gaza, we know is a genocide. Significant funds are raised by Israeli bonds, globally and in Europe. Recent research conducted by the financial research group Profundo found that sovereign bonds with a total value of over $19 billion were issued by Israel between October 2023 and January 2025. Deutsche Bank in Germany accounted for 2.49 billion of sales of Israel bonds, Paribas in France for 2 billion. The central bank, by approving the prospectus for Israel bonds, contributed to the raising by Israel of 4.5 billion in the 16-month period. Under the Genocide Convention, Ireland has an obligation to prevent genocide, which starts at the instance that the state learns of the existence of a serious threat that genocide will be committed. And we know that started with the ICJ ruling in 2024, in January 2024. The central bank, as an organ of the state, has obligations to act to prevent genocide and not to be complicit in genocide. The government has the obligation to ensure that no organ of the state, including the central bank, is complicit in genocide, and that the state and all organs of the state take all steps possible to prevent genocide. Ireland has the capacity to significantly diminish Israel's ability to fundraise for genocide, to cut off about 23% of the funds generated globally by Israel bonds by ending the authorisation by the central bank of the sale of these bonds. Under international law, all states have an obligation not to assist in any illegal situation. The ICJ ruling of July 2024 declared that Israel is committing the crime of apartheid and that the entire regime of military occupation of Palestinian territories is illegal and must end immediately. Providing access to EU markets to Israel to fundraise to support apartheid, military occupation and illegal settlements is in violation of Ireland's obligation not to assist in illegal situations. The claim that the Israel bonds programme had to be approved because it met technical standards required under the prospectus regulation is, in our view, entirely wrong. Nothing justifies the approval of a prospectus to raise funds for genocide. Collective punishment, crimes against humanity and many other crimes. It's simply absurd to claim that technical standards set out in a prospectus regulation set aside all other law. In addition, the prospectus is not complete. No mention is made of the ICJ ruling, the charge of genocide at the ICJ, Israel's profiteering from weaponry that is field tested in Gaza, or the fact that the bonds will be repaid or may be repaid using the proceeds of crime. And Section 88 of the preamble states clearly that the regulation is to be interpreted and applied in accordance with the rights and principles of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. Section 88 and the incompleteness of the prospectus are clear grounds for withdrawing approval within the terms of the EU prospectus itself. To date, the government has singularly failed to fulfil the state's obligations under the Genocide Convention and indeed under international law in general, to take all measures within its power which might contribute to preventing genocide. Stopping the flow of money to Israel from the sale of Israel bonds is within the government's power, it's within their responsibility. And that would have a deterrent effect on Israel economically and politically. It would signal an end to Israel's impunity. The government has engaged in inaction, obfuscation, denial, defeat of a bill to give the finance minister power to introduce national measures, defeat of a motion which simply called for honouring of Ireland's obligations under international law. The Minister for Finance has claimed that the central bank is independent and that the government can do nothing. Well, the central bank is an organ of the state and as such is obliged to honour the state's obligations under international law. And the government has a responsibility to ensure that it does this. And Section 6 of the Central Bank Act 1942 gives the Minister for Finance the power to advise the central bank. And I quote that section. The Minister may, on such occasion as he thinks proper, request the Governor on behalf of the Board or the Board to consult and advise with him in regard to the execution and performance by the Bank of the general function and duty imposed on the Bank by the foregoing subsections of this section, and the Board shall comply with every such request. The Government has to take whatever action is required to end the sale of Israel bonds under the authority of the central bank. It's not just a moral obligation, it's a legal obligation. Ireland has recognised the state of Palestine. The people of Ireland stand overwhelmingly and resolutely with the people of Palestine. People all over this country are outraged that the central bank is facilitating the sale of Israel bonds in Europe. Trade unions, civil society, solidarity organisations have called loudly and clearly for the ending of this funding of genocide. Councils all around the country have voted unanimously to demand that the central bank stop funding genocide. And these include Dublin City, Cork City, Donegal County, Fingal County Council, Kerry County Council, Kilkenny County Council, Waterford City and Wexford County Council, and motions are pending in many others. The message from the people of Ireland is clear. Stop funding genocide. Never again is never again for anyone. And so we ask you, this committee, to do all in your power to stop the central bank aiding Israel to fund the genocide it is perpetrating in Gaza. And we call on the government to immediately direct the central bank to withdraw its approval of the State of Israel bond programme. That is within their power. And to direct the central bank to stop facilitating the funding of genocide. And we further call on the government to take all necessary steps to end the involvement of the central bank in funding genocide, to enact emergency legislation to ensure this will not happen again, to fund genocide, that the central bank, to stop the central bank in the future funding genocide, apartheid, illegal settlements and war crimes. Thank you.